Hello and welcome back to, or welcome to my channel. I'm so happy to have you here today and I am so excited to share this design with you. This is what we're going to be making today, this little tie top, completely open in the front here with a little bow at the very top. Or if you want to, you could put a button at the top, or you could put ties or buttons all the way down the shirt. You really can have a lot of fun with the sort of closures for this top. You can also have fun with the design. In this pattern, I'm going to show you how to do the stripe top, but if you want to, you could just do one solid color instead. So let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial for this crochet top. For this tutorial, I am using weight 4 cotton yarn, and I'm using two different colors so we can get the striped look for the top. I will be using this dark brown yarn and this very light blue for the stripes of the top. I'm going to be using about 2 skeins of each color here, so 4 skeins in total. And then I will also be using a 5mm crochet hook. So I'm going to start by picking the color I want to use first, and we're going to start from the collar and work our way down. This is quite similar to a raglan top if you're familiar with that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my brown yarn because I want that to be the first stripe of the top, and I'm going to be chaining 66 for this. What you're going to be chaining for right now is the collar, so you want to chain a amount that fits comfortably around your neck or around your collar, and it's not too tight or too loose. And whatever number you do pick, just make sure it's divisible by the number 6. So in my case, I'll be chaining 66, and I'm making a size medium, perhaps closer to small, but pretty much a size medium top. And so I recommend starting with a chain of 66 and then just kind of wrapping it around your neck or around your collar, seeing how you like that fit, and then adjusting it if needed. You can add another 6 chains or take away another 6 chains, but generally you just need to make sure that the number you're using is divisible by the number 6. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 66 here. So here I have my chain of 66 for the collar. So if I were to wrap it like so, you would see it makes a little loop here, which if I were to wrap this right around my neck or my collar, I would be happy with this length here. So once you have completed your chain, we're now going to go ahead and do the math to determine where we want to place our first increases. You're going to have a total of 4 increases on this chain here, and they're all going to be placed a little bit differently because we want to have the start of the collar, and then we want to have an increase, and then the distance for the sleeve, and another increase. And then we want to have the back of the shirt, and then an increase, and then the distance of the sleeve, and another increase, and then you want to have that last little bit for the front of the shirt. But what you're going to do for this math is first we're going to determine how many stitches we need for each shoulder or each sleeve. So the way we do that is we take the number that we chained, which I chained 66, and divide it by 6. So 66 divided by 6 is 11, so I know that I will need 11 stitches in between the increases for the shoulder. So that's just for the shoulder. So we still have to find the distance for the back of the shirt and then the distance for the little front parts of the shirt here. So we know that in between here for the shoulder or the sleeve is going to be 11, so go ahead and write down that number so you don't forget it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that 11 and multiply it by 2, or whatever number you ended up with, multiply it by 2. So 11 times 2 is 22. I'm then going to take the number that I chained, which is 66, and subtract the number we just made. So 11 times 2 equals 22, and then I subtract 22 from the number I chained, which is 66. So then that equals 44. So the reason I did that was to determine how many stitches I had left over. So if each of the sleeves takes up 11 stitches and there's 2 sleeves, then I know that 11 times 2 is 22, and so the 2 sleeves combined is 22 stitches. And if I subtract that from the number that I made the chain with, which is 66, I then have 44 remaining. So I still have 44 remaining stitches that are not including the sleeves. So with those 44 stitches, or whatever number you decided, you're then going to go ahead and subtract 4 from that number because those 4 stitches are the 4 places where we increase. So we're just going to subtract 4. So then I have 40 left over, and I'm going to take that 40 and divide it by 2. So 40 divided by 2 is 20, and so I know that the sleeves each are going to be 11 stitches, and then the front and the back of the shirt is going to be 20 stitches. But because our shirt is not a perfect circle, if I was making a perfect top that was not open in the front, I would make a circle like this, and I would have 20 stitches for the front and 20 stitches for the back. But because I'm keeping it open like so, we're not going to close the circle. I'm then going to split that 20 in half, so I have 10 stitches, 11 stitches for the first sleeve, 20 stitches for the back of the shirt, 11 stitches for the next sleeve, and 10 stitches for this part, or the other side of the front of the shirt. So then these two are just 10 stitches, so that if we were to bring it together, it would equal 20. I hope that makes sense. Basically, if you chained 66, you can go ahead and just follow along with me. You don't have to write any numbers down because I've already done the math for you and I'll just tell you what to do. But if the first base chain that you made is any number different than 66, go ahead and complete the math that I just explained to figure out how many chains are going to be for each sleeve and how many chains are going to be for the back of the shirt as well as the front of the shirt. So in our case, if we chain 66, we've got 10, 11, 20, 11, and 10. So now let's go ahead and use those numbers to place our very first increases. This is the most difficult part of the top. Once we get this first row completed, it is just going to be really easy to complete this top. So just bear with me as we get this very first row with all of our increases in place, because once we're done with this, it's going to be a lot easier. So what I'm going to start off by doing is just chaining an extra 2, because I'm going to be working with double crochet, so I want to chain 2 more than that chain of 66. So I can then take my hook, yarn over for the double crochet, and I'm going to go 2 chains down and into that 3rd chain, which is actually the 66th chain that I made. So I'm going past those 2 bonus chains that we just made, inserting my hook into that 3rd chain and placing our first double crochet. Like so. So I'm going to start by placing 10 double crochets. We already did 1 here, so I'm going to do another 9 double crochets, and this is for that first part of the collar where we took the number for the front of the shirt and cut it in half. So I took that 20, cut it in half to realize I need to do 10 stitches, so I'm going to start with those 10 double crochets. And here, after placing my 10th double crochet, I now have these 10 stitches here, so into the next stitch we're going to go ahead and do an increase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and place a double crochet right into this next stitch, which is my 11th stitch, like so. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to chain 1, I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to insert my hook into that exact same chain stitch. So into that same 11th stitch that I had just placed that double crochet, I'm inserting my hook and placing another double crochet. So you should have 2 double crochets with a chain 1 coming out of that 1 stitch there. I'm now going to go ahead and place another 11 double crochets. 11 is the number that I had determined that I need for each sleeve. So I'm going to do the sleeve number of double crochets, which for my case is 11. So now going off from that increase we just made, I'm going to do another 11 double crochets, one after another into each of these chain stitches. So here you can see where we did that first increase, and then I've placed 11 double crochets since then. And now we're going to go ahead and do another increase in the 12th stitch after those 11 double crochets. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook right into that next stitch, and place a double crochet. And just like we did with that other increase, I'm now going to chain 1, and then place another double crochet into that exact same stitch. So I'm inserting my hook into the exact same chain stitch I just double crocheted into, and I'm placing another double crochet. So here we have our first sleeve completed, or we're setting up for the first sleeve. So we should have an increase, and then whatever number you realized you need for the sleeve, which in my case was 11 double crochets, and then a second increase. So now this right here is the front of the shirt. This is going to be the sleeve, and now we're going to work across the back of the shirt. So whatever number you had determined you need for the back of the shirt, which in my case was 20, we're now going to go ahead and complete. So I'm now going to do another 20 double crochet stitches into each one of these chain stitches here. I'm going to go ahead and just complete 20 double crochets, therefore making up the back of the shirt. And now after completing all 20 of those stitches for the back of the shirt there, so 20 stitches from this last increase to here, last 20 in total, I'm going to go ahead and do another increase because we're getting ready to do our second shoulder or sleeve. So right into the next stitch here, I'm going to go ahead and place a double crochet. I'm then going to chain 1 and then place another double crochet into that exact same stitch. So I'm inserting my hook into the exact same chain stitch and completing another double crochet, like so. And now we're going to go ahead and do the number of double crochets for the sleeve because we're now working on the next sleeve or shoulder portion, which we had determined for my chain 66 collar here that I'm going to do 11 double crochets. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over and complete 11 double crochets into the next 11 chain stitches here, to make up our second sleeve. And here, after completing that 11th stitch, so here we have 11 double crochets going from that last increase that we made right here to here is 11 for that sleeve. We're going to go ahead and complete another increase now right in the next stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, place a double crochet right into that next chain stitch, chain 1, and then double crochet into that exact same stitch. So now at this point we should have just 10 stitches remaining, which is the same as the number of stitches we started with, which altogether would make up 20, which is the number that we need for both the front and the back of our shirt. Now if you have a different number, like if you realized you needed 30, then at this point you should have 15 stitches remaining, but essentially you should have the same number of stitches remaining at the end of our chain as we used when we started here before we got to our first increase. So I have exactly 10 chain stitches remaining, which is perfect because that's the same number of stitches that I started with. And then when I put them together, that would equal 20, which is the number that I need for the front and the back of my shirt. So I'm going to go ahead now and complete these 10 double crochets, which will bring me right to the end of my chain. And now after completing this last stitch, I'm just going to go ahead and lay this out to show you exactly what it should be looking like. So here we have the little collar that we started. And as you can see here, we have our little increases. It should kind of make a square shape if you lay it out perfectly flat. So here and here is going to be the front of our shirt. It's going to be left open. That way we can have the cute little tie at the front. But these two distances should equal each other. So these are 10 together, they're 20, but separate they are both 10 stitches. And then here we have our increases, and in between those increases should be, for my case, 11 stitches, but they should be the same on either side, and these here are going to become the sleeves. We're going to continue to grow it out to make these big enough to be sleeves. And then this along the back should be the back of your shirt, which should be the same number of stitches as if you were to put the two front pieces together. So together these two equal 20, and then the back here equals 20. So we have the front of our shirt, the sleeves, and the back of our shirt. And your project should be looking like this. This is the most difficult step of the entire project, is just getting the measurements here correct and getting the increases set in place. But now we know where these increases are, so we can go ahead and do the next row. If you have a hard time noticing increases, I do recommend going in with a stitch marker quickly and just marking each of these chain 1 sections that we made. But I personally am able to determine where these increases take place, so I will not be marking any of these spots. But if you think you might accidentally miss them, I recommend just putting a little stitch marker in each of these corners where we have those chain 1 sections so you don't miss them when we go ahead and complete our second row. So I'm going to be doing every single stripe here with 2 rows of double crochet. So I'm going to just keep on working with the same brown color. And I'm going to go ahead and start by chaining 2 to act as our turning chain. So I can then turn my work and go ahead and place my first double crochet into this first stitch. So all I'm going to do for many rows here, I'm going to show you how to do this for a couple rows, but we're just going to basically do the exact same thing for quite a bit of the top. So I'll just walk you through the first like 3 or so rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double crochet into every single one of these stitches all the way up until I reach that little chain 1 section that we made in the first increase. So all of these stitches here, I'm placing a double crochet, and I'm paying attention to my project because once I reach this increase here, I want to pause because we're going to do something a little bit different in the increase section. So here we have that first increase section, and I'm going to make sure I work my way all the way up to that chain 1. So I'm going to make sure I'm really paying attention and placing my hook into that very last double crochet before we reach the chain 1, like so. I don't want to miss any stitches, but right here we have that first increase with the little chain 1 between those 2 double crochets, and into this chain 1 we're going to go ahead and complete another increase. So I'm yarning over and I'm going to insert my hook just right into this section here under that chain 1, so just right into that hole. I'm going to go ahead and place a double crochet like so. I'm then going to chain 1, yarn over, insert my hook into that exact same section, that same little increase hole, and place another double crochet. So we're just putting another increase right on top of that increase we had before. I'm then going to yarn over and begin double crocheting up to the next increase. And you just want to pay attention here and make sure that you are getting this first stitch here. Sometimes it can get a little bit hidden because this double crochet we just made sometimes slides over it and kind of hides that stitch. So just make sure you are indeed getting your hook into that very first stitch after the increase before we just continue placing double crochets. So now I'm going to go ahead and double crochet up until I reach the next increase, which is just a couple stitches away. Right here is our next increase. So I'm just going to pay attention, make sure I don't accidentally skip over it. I'm going to place a double crochet into every single stitch up until I reach that next increase there. So here in the next increase, I made sure I double crocheted all the way up to the increase there. I didn't miss any stitches. And now into this little chain one section or increase of the previous row, I'm going to go ahead and complete another increase. So I'm placing a double crochet right under that chain one. I'm going to chain one and then double crochet into that exact same section like so, therefore completing our next increase. I'm then going to go ahead and make sure I insert my hook into that very first stitch after that increase, and I'm going to double crochet into every single stitch all the way over until I reach the next increase, which is all the way over here. And now in this next increase, we're going to go ahead and do that same thing where I'm going to place an increase into the little chain one section. So I'm inserting my hook right under that chain one, placing a double crochet. I'm going to then chain one and then place another double crochet into that exact same section there, like so. And that was our third increase. We have one more remaining, so I'm going to go ahead and just double crochet right over to our very last increase of the row, which is right here. And now in this last increase, we're going to do that exact same thing. I'm placing an increase right in that chain one section, or a double crochet right in the chain one section. I'm going to chain one and then place another double crochet right in that same section. So it really is that easy. You're just going to go ahead and go along and just increase every time there was an increase before. You just want to make sure you don't miss any of the increased spots, and you also don't miss the stitches right before or right after the increased sections. But now I'm just double crocheting all the way down to the end of my row, so I can therefore complete the second row of our project with just double crochets here. So there is the second row completed, and that's all you're going to do for many rows just to build up the actual shape of the top, is you're just going to go ahead and double crochet into every single stitch and then complete an increase in each of the 4 increase sections along the project. So just make sure you pay attention to where those increase sections are, and then complete a little double crochet, chain one, double crochet into each of those sections. Now because the top I am making is striped, which it doesn't have to be, if you're not doing a striped top, you can ignore this step, but because it is striped, I'm going to go ahead and switch colors every 2 rows. So I just completed these 2 rows, and now if you want to, you can cast off and cut your yarn and then cast on with a new color. But if you're anything like me and you despise weaving in loose ends, then I highly recommend you do this instead. So instead of casting off, I'm just going to pull this string or this loop really long so it won't come undone. If you're worried about coming undone, you could even put a really loose knot in this loop here, like so. And we're just going to leave that skein of yarn attached. I'm not going to cut any of the yarn, and we're going to come back to that. So this skein of yarn, the brown yarn, is just going to stay attached as I complete my next 2 rows with the light blue. So I'm going to go ahead and get my light blue yarn. I'm going to insert my hook into this last stitch that we had just completed right there. I'm going to grab my light blue yarn or my second color, and I'm just going to pull it right through, and I'm then going to chain 2 to act as our turning chain. I'm then going to go ahead and turn my work, and again, I'm not cutting any yarn. I'm going to leave that brown yarn just right where it is attached to the skein. And now we're going to go ahead and just start double crocheting. So I'm going to double crochet into that exact same stitch I casted on from. So in this exact same stitch, I'm placing a double crochet. And now I'm just going to go ahead and complete this row just as I had just demonstrated. So I'm going to double crochet all the way up to the first increase section. And then in that section, I'm going to place a double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet, therefore completing another increase. So I'm going to go ahead and just do 2 rows just like I demonstrated, and I'll see you once I'm done with those 2 rows to show you how we're going to switch colors over to the other stripe. But if you're not doing stripes and you're just doing a solid top, you can ignore this step and just go ahead and continue completing rows with an increase in every single one of the increase sections. Otherwise, I'll be right back as soon as I complete these 2 rows of my blue yarn or my second color for the second stripe. So now after completing those 2 rows in my second color or my second stripe, what I'm going to do in order to switch over to that first color, so the brown yarn, so I can do my next stripe, is I'm going to first go ahead and pull my hook. Again, I'm not casting off of this color, I'm not cutting the yarn, I'm just pulling my hook to make a really big loop. And again, if you're nervous about this pulling undone, you can just tie a super loose knot like so into that loop. And I'm just going to leave that skein attached. I'm now going to go back down to that first stripe that we just completed. I'm going to go ahead and find that really big loop that we had made, and I did tie a loose knot, so I'm going to quickly just untie that knot. and I'm going to pull that loop tight right on top of my hook so I'm ready to work with this color again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by chaining 4. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and I make sure I'm chaining quite tight. I want these to be quite tight stitches, and that chain 4 should equal the height of 2 rows of double crochet. So here I have 4 chains, which brings this up to the top of my double crochets here, that row of blue, or those 2 rows of blue. So I'm tipping my work like so. I'm going to insert my hook right into that first blue stitch there, the stitch we just ended on. I'm inserting my hook and I'm going to slip stitch. So I'm picking up some yarn, pulling it through that stitch, then also pulling it through the loop on my hook, like so. So I now am casted on with the brown yarn, or the second color, right here on this first stitch, so I'm ready to go ahead and start my next row. Now there is just a little strip here where we did that chain section to get this color up to the top, and I'll show you once we're done with the piece how I'm going to go ahead and hide this. We're going to add a border to the edge of the top regardless, and that border is just going to kind of tuck this color right in and sort of hide where we change colors. So if you don't want that, you can just cast off like normal and change colors every single time, but I cannot stand weaving in loose ends, and I have found this to be the perfect way to help reduce the amount of loose ends, because now I can just carry this color up to the next side. So every time I switch stripes or switch colors in this project, what I do is I chain 4 and slip stitch, therefore just carrying this first stripe color all the way up so I can now go ahead and use it. So I basically now cast it on with the next color or the next stripe. So I'm going to chain 2 so I can start my project. I'm going to yarn over and double crochet into that exact same stitch that we had just slip stitched into, like so. So it should look like that. And now you can see I'm getting started with the next color here. And our other stripe, this blue one that I'm currently not working with, is still attached to the skein of yarn. I still have the skein of yarn here. I haven't cut the yarn at all, but it's just waiting for when I'm ready to come back to it. And then I'll do that exact same thing where I chain 4 and then jump up to the top and start working with the blue. But again, you can just go ahead and cast off if you want to. So now I'm just going to go ahead and do this next stripe here, and I'm just going to continue for several rows, just double crocheting into every single stitch until I reach that little increase section, and then I'm going to place an increase under each one of those chain 1 little increase sections across the row. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for about 12 rows, and I'll see you once I'm done with that. So I did 12 rows of the double crochet, so it's now looking like this. And if I were to try it on, so I put the back of it to my back, and then I have the open part to the front, like so. It is looking like this. It's like a little tiny cape right now, and at this width or this length of rows, we should sort of have the sleeves in place. So right here is the bottom of the front of the sleeve, and then right here is the bottom of the back of the sleeve. And if you can tell, I know I have kind of a bulky jumper on underneath, so hopefully it doesn't get too much in the way, but if you can tell here, this is like a pretty proper size for a sleeve. It doesn't go all the way under my arms very comfortably, which is okay. We're gonna come back and add more fabric to underneath the arms, so don't worry about that. We're just focusing on the top. So for the top part of the arm here, for the top of the sleeve, where it starts from this side to this side, it is just a good fit. And if I were to add any more rows, this would just start to balloon out too much. This is just a really nice fit here where I just want to start working my way down straight without any more increases. So I'm going to stop here once I reach those 12 rows, like so. Now the other thing with these kinds of tops is that they tend to kind of fall forward more, and then the back of the shirt tends to be too short or it bunches up in the back. So to counter that, we're going to quickly add some additional rows to the back to then even out the entire thing. So as you can see here in the front of my top, I have it pulled forward nice and comfortably. If I were to hold right here where the opening is, like so, right where we're going to put the string, it looks like this. It is a very cute, comfortable fit. But then if I flip it to the back, you'll see it's definitely pulled up a lot further, and there's less fabric in the back than there is in the front. And because we're about to work just straight down, I want it to be an even amount of fabric all the way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple rows to just the back of the project to therefore even out all the fabric, so then this side of the sleeve will then be even to the back, where right now this part and this part are not even. This side is up a lot higher than this side. Now the first thing I'm going to do to start adding the rows to the back of our project is I'm going to cast off here where I'd finished adding all of the rows with the increases. So I haven't casted off of either color yet because I've been keeping both colors attached as I add each stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick up this first color, which is the brown. I'm going to reinsert my hook and then pull that loop nice and tight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut my yarn, and I always leave a little bit of a tail when I cut my yarn so I can weave it in later. And then I just pull my hook, pulling that yarn right through the loop like so, and then give that yarn a little tug to just lock it in place, and then we'll come back and weave in that loose end once we're done with the entire project. I'm then going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with my other color, or the second stripe color. So just like I did with the brown, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook right into that big loop that we have and then pull it tight onto the hook. Like so. And then I'm going to chain one, like so. And then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, and pull that yarn right through, giving it a little tug to lock it in place. So I've now cast it off, and we just have this as one just big panel. And now we're going to go ahead and add to the back of it. So here is the front. The open part here is the front. So I'm going to flip my project over, and I'm going to also flip it upside down. So I'm working on the back, the bottom of the back of the top like so. I'm going to go ahead and grab my hook, and I'm going to insert my hook right under that chain one in this little chain section. So at the back of the project, I'm going over to the right, and on this first sort of increase section here, before we reach the sleeve, I'm not working into the sleeve. I'm going across, and I'm going to insert my hook right under that chain one section in that little increase. I'm now going to go ahead and get my yarn, and I'm going to start working with my brown yarn because we want to do the opposite color as this stripe here so we can keep up with the stripes. I'm going to get that brown yarn and go ahead and cast on. I'm then going to chain two, and now I'm going to place a double crochet right into this exact same section here. So I'm inserting my hook into that exact same under the chain one section, that little increase, and I'm going to place a double crochet like so. And just like we've been doing before, I'm simply going to double crochet in every single stitch, but instead of going all the way across until I complete the entire row, I'm just going to go from this increase section that we casted on from to the next increase section. So I'm just going across the 20 stitches that make up, well now it's more than 20 because we've done the increases, but I'm just going across these stitches here that make up the back of the shirt. So I'm going from this increase section to this one with all double crochets. So I've now worked my way all the way across with double crochets, all the way from this increase, and now I'm right here next to the next increase or chain one section. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over and insert my hook right under that chain one and then place a double crochet like so. So I now have double crochets going all the way from this little increase section to this one, just going all the way across the back of the shirt here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain two and turn my work because we're only adding rows to the back of the shirt, not to any other part. So I just want to work from here to here for a couple rows. So I'm just going to go ahead now and just start placing a double crochet into every single stitch. I'm not doing any increases or anything. I'm just double crocheting all the way across these same stitches we just placed. So I'm going all the way from this side of the brown to this side. And then once I've completed that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my other color for my second stripe, which is the blue. I'm going to complete a stripe of blue. So I'm just adding additional rows to the back of the shirt as I explained to help bring the length of the back down a little bit more. So I'm going to do 2 rows of brown, 2 rows of blue just from one side to the other at the back of the shirt with just simple double crochet. So I'm going to go ahead and whip out those rows. In total, it will be 4 rows of double crochet, and I'll see you once I'm done with that. You can see that we have this little extra chunk of fabric coming off the back of the shirt here, which is 4 additional rows of double crochet, which is perfect. I cast it off of the brown yarn here, but then for the blue, which is the very last color, I'm still casted on, which is perfect. You want to keep this color casted on. And if you need any more than 4 rows on the back of the shirt, you're going to then have to jump up to 8 rows, because the most important thing to make sure the whole shirt matches and lines up perfectly is you need the bottom row that we just finished on to match the bottom row of the rest of the project. So as you can see here, the bottom row is blue, and then when I added this extra fabric, I also ended on blue. So all around, we still have the outside row being blue, even with the extra fabric here. So now if I put this back on, just like we did before, you should see that it lines up a lot better. Here I have the top or the front of the shirt, and I'm still kind of pulling it forward so it sits comfortably and it looks cute. And now in the back, it's a little bit different because now we have more length in the back. And you can see when I stand sort of sideways here that the front of the shoulder or the front piece here is pretty much in line with the back piece. They're almost parallel, where before the back piece was up much higher. Now it's lined up because we added that extra fabric. So now if I go like this, I can take this front corner of the sleeve and then this back piece, and if I sort of pinch them together, that there makes up the sleeve. Now, as you can see, I don't even have enough fabric to actually pinch it together. It doesn't fit comfortably under my arm, which is okay. There is a small chance that this is all you need and that the front of the sleeve, this little increase section, and the very back corner of the part we just added might just touch comfortably under your arm, and you don't need to add any extra fabric. That's perfect. Just go ahead and slip stitch these two corners together. But more likely than not, you're going to have to add a little extra fabric underneath your arm. So here you can see that these two fabric pieces really don't touch, and I want to make sure it's a comfortable fit. So I'm going to go ahead and add a chain underneath to connect the front of this sleeve to the back of the sleeve. So I'm taking a second to just kind of eyeball it and seeing about how many chains I might need. And I know for myself, I'm making about a size medium. I'm going to do chain 10 to reach all the way from this side to this side. I'm going to add 10 extra chains right underneath to then secure that and make a perfect round opening for the sleeve. But you just want to put this on like I am now and then kind of eyeball it, fiddle around with the fabric a little bit, and figure out if you need more or less than 10 chains. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find right where I left off, because as I mentioned, I did not cast off of this bottom corner, which is perfect. If you did happen to cast off, you just want to go ahead and insert your hook right back into that corner, that stitch that you casted off from, and then cast back on with that same color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make that chain to connect that bottom corner to the bottom of the sleeve. So this right here is currently upside down, but this right here is the top of the sleeve and then the bottom of the sleeve. And as I demonstrated when I was trying it on, we need to add a little bit of extra fabric in between the bottom of the sleeve just to give that sleeve a little bit more room. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. So because I'm making a size medium top, I have judged that I need to chain 10 for this sleeve, but you may need to chain a little bit more or a little bit less, and then you can try this on as soon as we connect the chain and just see for yourself before you continue forward, so that way you know for certain if it's a good amount or not. So we're going to just start by estimating, and I'm going to go ahead and do 10. So I'm going to chain 10. So here's my chain of 10, and now I'm going to go ahead and find that front part of the sleeve. So I'm going to fold the front down like so, and here you can see that next increase section, which is right at the front of our project. This is the front, the opening here, and then this is that increase section with the little chain 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook right under that chain 1 section like so, and then I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch. So I'm inserting my hook under the chain 1, picking up some yarn and pulling it through that, and then also pulling the yarn through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. So now you should have a chain 10 connecting the back corner of your top to the very front of the sleeve. So altogether it makes an opening here for the sleeve, which if I lay it the correct way, you should be able to tell like so. So if I lay it this way, you can see this is the front of the project, here is the sleeve, and then underneath the sleeve we now have a chain 10, which is just adding that bit of extra fabric right under the sleeve. So now what you want to do is, if you aren't certain about this distance, just quickly try on the top and see if this is a comfortable fit with the chain underneath the arm. So once you've decided it is indeed a comfortable fit, I'm going to go ahead and cast off. So I'm going to just chain 1 and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, and then pull my hook till that yarn pops right through and give that yarn a little tug. So there is the first sleeve completed, or the first little extra chain, and now we need to do the exact same thing to the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this side, I'm going to flip my work so I can find the back of my project, and I'm going to go over to the other right or back corner of the back of my shirt. So here we have the back part of the shirt, and I've already added a chain to this side. So now I'm going to go over to the other side, and I'm going to insert my hook into that very furthest stitch in the corner, like so. So the very furthest back corner stitch, just like we have on this side. I'm going to go ahead and get that same yarn, so I'm still using the blue yarn, and I'm going to cast on. So I'm pulling that yarn right through that stitch, and then I'm going to go ahead and chain 10. Here I went ahead and made a chain 10, which is the exact same number I chained for the other side. So if you did not chain 10 and you chained a different number, you want to chain that same number for this side. And now I'm going to flip my work, so I'm looking at the front of the project, and I'm going to find that little increase, which here you can see is the front of the project, and then going in a little bit is that increase for the sleeve. And here you can see we have that little chain 1 increase. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook right into that increase section, so right under that chain 1, and then I'm going to pick up the yarn and pull it through that chain 1 or that increase section, and then also pull it through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 1 so I can cast off. But here you can see we did that exact same thing. We have a chain 10 section going right in between the back of our shirt and the front of our shirt, therefore making a perfect opening here for the sleeve. So now I'm going to go ahead and cast off. So I'm going to cut my yarn, and because I already chained 1, I'm just going to pull my hook till that yarn pops right through and give it a tug to lock it in place. So here we now have all of the difficult parts really of the top are completed now. We have the structure all formed, and we just need to work on making the top longer. So this is the very top part of the top. We have the opening here at the front, and then on either side are the sleeves. And you can see we have this little extra fabric on the bottom of each sleeve, which should have a comfortable fit. And now after we've completed that, we're gonna go ahead and just start working our way down until we get the length of the top. So I'm gonna show you how to do that for about 2 rows, but it's really self-explanatory, and you're just gonna keep on adding rows until you get the length that you want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to find my brown yarn, because we just worked with the blue yarn, so the next stripe color for me is going to be brown. I'm going to grab my brown yarn, I'm going to tip my work or flip it so that the bottom of the top is face up, because I'm going to be working into that portion. So I have it upside down right now. And I'm going to make sure I cast on the same side that I was working on before, which the way I can tell is because I don't cut my yarn after each stripe, as I explained. So you can see here I have these little chain sections on this side where I would then jump the yarn to the next side. And this is the side of the project I want to cast on, then not this side, but this one. So once I've decided which side I'm casting on, I'm going to insert my hook into that furthest stitch right there, like so. And then I'm going to get my brown yarn, or whatever color I'm using for the next stripe, and I'm going to pull it right through that stitch, chain 2, and I'm going to place a double crochet into that exact same stitch. So into the exact same stitch I cast it on from, I am placing a double crochet. And now, very easy, I'm just going to go ahead and double crochet into every single stitch all the way around. So I'm double crocheting all the way from this first section here, all the way around across the back, and then all the way back to this side here. So we're doing one complete row of double crochet, and I'm not doing any increases or anything. I'm just double crocheting into every single stitch all the way around this entire row. And now when you reach this chain that we added underneath both sleeves, so at 2 points in the row, you're going to go ahead and you're going to reach this chain section. You want to make sure that you are placing a double crochet into every single chain stitch. So it helps to just keep track and count. So from here out, I'm counting and making sure I am placing 10 double crochets into the 10 chain stitches, and I didn't miss a single chain. But you just want to treat these like normal stitches, and I'm just placing a double crochet into every single chain stitch. So in total for myself, it will be 10 double crochets into these 10 chain stitches. And then once I'm done with all these chain stitches, I'll just go back like normal. And then once I reach the chain on the other side, I will once again double crochet into the chain stitches. So as you can see here, I'm just working along, placing a double crochet into every single stitch. And then once I reach this little chain section here, I'm making sure that I am placing double crochets into each of the chain stitches as well. So I'm generally just doing one row of double crochet into every single stitch. Okay, so I've now reached the end of that row. So if I lay it out like a normal shirt again, let's see, like so. You can see here I have one row of brown going all the way along the bottom here. So it goes from one side, one front, all the way to the other. And right here we have those chain 10 sections. I now have a solid row of double crochet. So now going forward, it's going to be a lot easier because I don't have to work into any chains. We're just working right into stitches now. And now all we're gonna do is just continue to add rows, just going all the way down until this reaches the length that you want. I'm gonna come back later and add more rows for the sleeves. So if the sleeves seem really short, don't worry about it. Right now we're working on just the body of the project. So I'm just gonna keep on adding rows. So now here at the end of this row, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2 because I need to do another row of brown. I'm going to turn my work like so, and now I'm just going to place a double crochet into every single stitch all the way along this row. So I'm just going all the way around, just double crocheting into every single stitch, completing an entire row here of double crochet. And because there's no chains left underneath those arms, because we already filled that in with double crochet, it should be really easy. I'm just placing a double crochet into every single stitch, and then once I'm done with that row, I'm going to go ahead and cast down with my blue so I can do the next stripe. And just like I showed before, I'm choosing to not cut my yarn at the end of each row. So I will be doing this with the stripes where I just kind of use a little bit of a chain 4 and then jump to connect the colors like so, like I demonstrated before. So I'm going to just keep doing the same process, and essentially we're just going to keep working in just plain rows of double crochet, going all the way around like so, double crocheting into every single stitch, and I'll be doing 2 rows for each color so I can get even stripes. But I'm going to go ahead and just do a bunch of stripes here of just double crochet from this point down until I reach the length of the top that I want. So it is quite self-explanatory, just double crochet into every single stitch, switching colors every 2 rows so you have those nice stripes. I'm going to go ahead and do that for several rows, and I'll see you once I'm done with that. So I decided to add 20 rows from right under the arm here to the bottom of the shirt. So all of these rows that we added, I did a total of 20, which brings the top right comfortably along my waistline. I'm very happy with this length for the top. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off, and then we're going to add a couple rows just to bring the sleeves down a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by casting off for both colors here at the bottom now that I've decided I like the length of the top. So just like how I cast off any other color or yarn, I'm going to just start by chaining 1 and then cut my yarn, leaving a tail so I can weave it in later. And then I just pull my hook till the yarn pops right through that stitch. And now because I have both colors still attached, I have both the blue and the brown still attached because I just switch my colors like this instead of cutting the yarn each time. I'm going to go back and find that brown stripe, which is right here. I'm going to cast off of that color as well. So I'm casting off of both colors here at the bottom of the shirt. So I'm going to again just chain 1 and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, and then pull my hook until that yarn pops right through like so. So we are now done adding on to the bottom of the shirt, and I just need to add to the sleeves. You don't have to add to the sleeves if you like the way it fits now, but I do want to just add about 4 more rows to the sleeves just to give it more of a short sleeve look, because right now it's kind of bordering on a tank top or a very open sleeve, and I want it to be a little bit more like a t-shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and add 4 rows to each sleeve. So I'm going to show you how to do this on one sleeve, and then you're just going to take that same method and repeat it for both sleeves. So it doesn't matter which one you start on. I'm just picking one of the sleeves here, and I'm rotating my work so that I can work into the bottom of the sleeve and then work around. So as you can see here, there's the chain 10 that I made before. That's at the bottom of the sleeve. I'm going to go ahead and just insert my hook right in the middle of that chain 10. I'm just estimating where the middle is, but if you want to, you can count. And now I'm going to go ahead and get my next color of yarn. So because the last row that we have for the sleeve here is in blue, I'm going to go ahead and get the brown yarn. So whatever color is opposite of the last color that works for the sleeve there, you want to go ahead and get the opposite color. And now I'm going to grab that yarn and pull it right through that stitch and then chain 2. And now what we're going to do is we're going to place double crochets all the way around the opening here for the sleeve. So I'm going to go right into the next chain stitch, and I'm going to place another double crochet. So right now I'm just working into these chain stitches. So I'm working right into the chain stitch, making sure I'm not skipping a single stitch, like so. And now when I reach this part of the sleeve, it gets a little bit tricky because instead of working into an actual stitch, like the top of a stitch here, where there's very distinct holes that you would insert your hook, instead while we're going up, I'm working into the side of the stitch. So as you can see here, I'm working into the side of these double crochets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook just right under sort of the post of that double crochet and place a stitch. And then I'm going to insert my hook right into this section here between those 2 double crochets and place a stitch. And then I'm going to insert my hook under the post of that next double crochet and place a stitch, like so. So I'm still just working right into these stitches, but instead of working into the top of the stitch like so, I'm working into the little post because we're working sideways for now. So again, I'm going to go ahead and just insert my hook into these holes here as I work my way. And I'm going under the entire post that makes up that stitch, like so. And you want to have about 3 or 4 stitches, double crochets, for each of these stripes when you're going horizontally like so. The technical number is you'd want to have 4 double crochet stitches for each stripe, because each stripe is made up of 2 double crochets, and because we're going horizontal, that's the height of 2 stitches. But for this case, sometimes it just looks better to do 3 instead. So you want to have between 3 or 4 stitches placed into each of these stripes or 2 rows of double crochet. And now here we're right back where we need to be, where I'm not working into the horizontal or the bar part of the stitch. I'm working into just the top of the double crochet, which now makes it a lot easier. So now going forward, I'm inserting my hook right as you normally would into the top of each stitch. So I'm just going right into the top of each double crochet stitch, and I'm placing more double crochets, just working my way all the way around. So I'm just going to continue double crocheting into each one of these stitches, just all the way around the top here of the sleeve, as I work my way back down to the bottom where we started the row of double crochet. And now I've worked my way right back down to the little chain section. So I've gone all the way around here, and I've reached this little chain section here. So just like we did before, I'm going to go ahead and place my double crochet stitches right into these chain stitches until it brings me right back to the start of the row where we began. So I'm just double crocheting into each one of these chain stitches here, like so. And now after I've completed that last stitch, so I've now double crocheted into every single stitch all the way around the opening of the sleeve here, I'm going to go ahead and close off this circle. So I'm going to insert my hook into the very first stitch that I made, like so, and I'm going to slip stitch by picking up that yarn, pulling it through the stitch on my hook, and then also pulling it through the loop on my hook. And that closes the circle there, giving us the perfect round opening for the sleeve. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 2, like so. I'm going to turn my work, so now I'm working this way, and now it's much easier because we've already placed all the double crochets. So now all we have to do is just double crochet into every single stitch. There's no chain stitches we have to work into, there's no horizontal stitches we have to work into. It's just a perfect round opening that we can just double crochet all the way around. So I'm just going to go ahead and whip out another row here where I just place a double crochet into every single stitch all the way around the opening for this sleeve, which these 2 rows will make up 1 stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and just double crochet all the way around this opening, placing 1 stitch of double crochet into every single stitch for the opening of the sleeve here. And now at the end of the row, once I've placed a double crochet into every single stitch and completed another row there around the sleeve, I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch again. So I'm inserting my hook right into the first stitch that I had made of that row, and then picking up my yarn, pulling it through that stitch and through the loop on my hook. I'm then going to chain 1 and cut my yarn because I'm casting off from this color. And to make up this sleeve, I want to just add 1 more stripe. You can make the sleeves as long as you want. Like if you wanted to, you could go all the way and do a long sleeve top and just keep adding more stripes. But for this case, because I want kind of that t-shirt look, I'm just going to go ahead and do 4 additional rows to the sleeve, which is 2 rows of brown and then 2 rows of blue. So I'm going to go ahead and get my blue yarn here, and I'm just going to cast right back on. So I'm picking up that yarn, pulling it right through that stitch, and then I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to start by placing a double crochet stitch right into the same stitch I just casted on from. So into that same stitch that I have the chain 2 coming out of, I'm placing a double crochet, and now I'm just going to go ahead and place a stitch into every single stitch around this circle just like I did before, and I'm going to do that for 2 rows. So just like before, I'm double crocheting into every single stitch, and I'm just going to go ahead and add 2 rows here of the blue yarn. So in total I will have 4 rows or 2 entire stripes making up 1 sleeve of this shirt. Then after I completed both of those rows for the blue stripe, I'm going to go ahead and cast off, and this completes the first one of those sleeves. Just casting off here. And so this sleeve is made up of 4 rows, and like I said, you can decide for yourself how many rows you want. You can try it on and see if you like that length for the sleeve or not. And then once you've completed 1 sleeve, you're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to find the other sleeve here, and just like before, I'm going to start at the very bottom of the sleeve, kind of right in the center of that chain. I'm going to insert my hook, and then I'm going to cast on with my yarn. And then I'm going to go ahead and complete this sleeve as well. And I'm going to do the exact same number of rows on this sleeve as I did on the other sleeve. So it's going to be 4 rows in total. And I'm doing it the exact same way I just demonstrated before. So if you need to, you can go back and watch that part of the tutorial again to make the second sleeve. But we're doing the exact same thing to make the second sleeve. and then we can go ahead and add the final details to the top. So now that I've completed the actual structure of the top, I have the sleeves at the perfect length, and I'm also happy with the length of the top itself. We're going to go ahead and add the final detail, which is going to be a little border. If you wanted to, you could pause now and weave in these loose ends before we add that border, but I'm going to wait and just weave in all the loose ends at the very end. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little border of single crochet to the inside here, the opening of the shirt, which is going to help hide this part here where we switched colors and sort of just carried the color. We're going to kind of hide that and tuck it away into a border. I will also be adding the border along the bottom of the top here and then along the collar. You can also add a border to either sleeve if you want to, but I think that makes the sleeve a little bit stiffer and I choose not to do that. But we are going to add a border to this part here, and as we add the border, we're also going to add little ties to the top here. If you don't want ties, you could attach it with a button instead and have a little button to secure it. You could even do buttons all the way down the front if you wanted to, but for the sake of this design or this pattern, I'm going to go ahead and make 2 ties that you can tie into a bow right at the front. So you're going to pick which color you want the border to be. Personal preference, I think the darker color looks better as the border, so I'm going to be using my brown yarn for the border. And now I'm going to go ahead and go up to the collar here, and I'm just going to roughly estimate it. I'm going to insert my hook right into sort of the middle back of the collar, so just right in the center there at the back of the collar. I'm going to go ahead and get my brown yarn or whatever color I want for the border, and I'm just going to pull that right through that stitch and chain 1 to lock it in place. And now this border is just going to be made up of single crochets, so we're just going to be single crocheting all the way along here. So I'm going to go ahead and just begin placing single crochet stitches, and I'm just going to be placing a single crochet stitch into every single stitch here. So I'm working along the collar right now, and I'm just going to single crochet into every single stitch up until I reach the corner here. So I'm going to go all the way along here, along the collar, and then once I reach the very end of the collar and we have to start going down the actual front of the shirt, I'm going to pause. So just single crochet into every single stitch until you reach the very edge here of the collar. And now you can see I have a single crochet all the way from the center back part of the shirt all the way along the collar up to that little corner there. And now that we're at the corner, I want to go ahead and quickly add the tie. So I'm going to start chaining for the first tie or string. You can make the string as long as you want, but I'm going to recommend doing a chain of 32. I have found that to be the perfect length to tie a little bow and then still have a little bit of string left over, but not too much string, and it still is a good length to be able to comfortably tie that bow. But you can do more or less depending on what you want. I'm going to go ahead and just do a chain of 32 here for this string. So right off of that last single crochet stitch, which should be right at the very corner there of the top, right where the tie should be, I'm now going to go ahead and chain 32. So here I have my chain of 32, and now we want to work our way back down, therefore sort of thickening the chain and then also working back to the project so we can continue on the border. So I'm going to chain extra chain to act as a turning chain. I'm going to insert my hook into that first chain, which should be the 32nd chain that we made. And I'm going to slip stitch now, so I'm going to pick up the yarn and pull that yarn through the chain stitch on my hook and then also through the loop that's already on my hook, like so. And this is just thickening up that chain a little bit to give us a good sturdy tie that we can use, and it's also bringing our hook or our project right back to the body of the project or the shirt so we can continue working on that border. So I'm going to insert my hook right into the next chain stitch, pick up some yarn and slip stitch again. So I'm pulling that yarn through the chain stitch and then also through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. And I'm going to repeat this for all 32 of these chain stitches. So I'm just going to slip stitch into every single chain stitch all the way down to the body of the project. And this should give you a nice durable string that we can use to tie the bow later when we're actually wearing the top. So again, a slip stitch, I'm inserting my hook into the chain stitch, picking up some yarn, pulling it through that chain stitch, and then also through the loop on my hook. And I'm going to repeat that for every single chain stitch all the way down till I reach the body of the project. After slip stitching all the way down that chain that we made, I'm going to kind of rotate it like so. So I'm looking back onto the project, and I'm going to insert my hook right into the next stitch. So right here we stopped right on the corner. I'm going to go sort of over the corner to the side and insert my hook right to the next stitch and then slip stitch, therefore bringing that strap right down flush with the project. So now if you look at it like so, we have this string just coming right off of the corner of the project, which is perfect. And now we want to go ahead and continue just single crocheting all the way down for the rest of the border. So I'm turning my work, so I'm now working down the front opening, one of the sides of the shirt, because I already worked along the collar and now I'm working along the side. And because we're working along the side, it's going to be a lot like when we worked into the sleeve portion, where we're working into the horizontal side of the double crochet stitches instead of the top. So as you can see here, we're working into sort of the post, and I'm inserting my hook underneath the entire post of that double crochet, like so. Instead of working into the actual top of a stitch, I'm going right under the post of this horizontal double crochet stitch and placing a single crochet. And to make sure you're getting it all lined up correctly, you should have 2 single crochet stitches for every 1 double crochet stitch when you're going horizontally like so. So I'm inserting my hook underneath the post of this first double crochet and placing a single crochet. And then I'm going to go into this little hole or gap here and place another single crochet. So that's 2. And we need 2 of these single crochets for each 1 double crochet. I'm going to do the exact same thing here for this stitch, therefore making 2 single crochets into that 1 horizontal double crochet stitch. And that's how you know you have the correct ratio of single crochet to double crochet as you work into the stitches horizontally like so, because horizontally the double crochet stitch is much taller than a single crochet stitch. So we want to make sure we're working 2 stitches into every 1 of these double crochets. So in total that would be 4 single crochets for each stripe of this color. So this entire stripe of blue here will have 4 single crochets worked into the side. So I'm going to go ahead and just place these single crochet stitches all the way down along the side of this top until I reach the very bottom here. Now I've single crocheted all the way down that side there, so now we're just going to turn my work, and now I'm working along the bottom. So along the bottom here, all of the stitches are fairly normal, so I'm just working right into the actual stitch itself. I'm not working into the horizontal version of a double crochet. I'm inserting my hook into the actual stitch here like so, and I'm just going to work all the way along the bottom of this top. So I'm just going all the way along here with single crochets until I reach the other side, where we can then work up the front of this side here. So you just want to go ahead and place a single crochet stitch into every single one of these stitches all the way along the bottom of the shirt. Now that I've single crocheted all the way along the bottom here for the bottom little border, I'm going to turn my work, so I'm working back up the other side. And this is the side that I have the sort of little extra bits of material where we were switching colors. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that I'm crocheting a little extra tightly, and I'm really pulling those pieces right into those single crochets to help hide that little extra bit of material that we have added. But just like before, I'm going to be placing 2 single crochet stitches for each 1 of these double crochet stitches, because we're working into the stitch horizontally. It's very important that we're doing 2 single crochet stitches for each 1 of these horizontal double crochet stitches. And I'm going to pause once I am 1 stitch away from the very top here. So I'm not going to place a single crochet into this very last stitch at the very top of the shirt. I'm going to pause right before I reach that stitch. So I'm going to work my way all the way up until I'm 1 stitch shy of the top of the shirt. So I've now done that entire row of single crochets up the side here, and I just wanted to show you quickly another thing you could do instead of working that little extra chain section into the single crochets is you could push it sort of to the back of the project. So when it came to the brown single crochets or extra strands, I just worked those in because I'm working with the brown yarn. But whenever I came to one of these blue strands, I ended up pushing it towards the wrong side of the project and just placing all my stitches on the other side. So that way it's even extra hidden and it's not going to poke out as much. But if you want to work that right in as well, you totally could. I just thought it would look a little bit cleaner to sort of take those extra chains that don't match the border color, and then I placed all of my stitches on the other side and pushed these towards the inside or the wrong side of the project. So I just want to show you that quickly because it could be another extra little hack that might help, but otherwise you can just single crochet over all those extra little chain sections that we use to switch colors. So here I am just 1 stitch shy from the very top of this side of our shirt. So now we're going to go ahead and add the other tie. So I'm going to chain the exact same number that I chained for the other side, which was 32. So I'm going to go ahead and make a chain of 32. So here I have my chain of 32, which is the exact same number of chains I did for the other string. And now we're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to chain one extra chain to act as a turning chain. I'm going to insert my hook into the next chain here, which is the 32nd chain, and I'm going to slip stitch. So I'm picking up that yarn, pulling it through the chain stitch, and then also through the loop on my hook. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into every single one of these chain stitches, so all 32 of these chain stitches. I'm just going to go ahead and slip stitch my way all the way back down until I reach the body of the project here. So just all the way down these chain stitches, I'm going to be slip stitching. And now after I slip stitched all the way down that chain there, making this string, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that very last stitch and then place a single crochet into that very last stitch, therefore bringing the end of that string flush to the project. So now we should have a string like this on both sides of the top, on both corners here, and they should be lined up and the exact same length so that we can tie these together when we're actually wearing the top and secure it into a bow. And if you wanted to add a button and not a string, you can just skip this part and just do the entire border and then sew a button on later. And now I'm going to go ahead and finish off this project by placing these last few single crochet stitches. So I'm just working all the way along the collar now. So I'm going all the way along here up until I reach this little bump halfway through the collar towards the back of the shirt where we initially cast it on and started placing those single crochets. So I'm just single crocheting all the way along this last stretch here until I reach the start of where we began the border. And now here you can see I worked my way all the way up to where we placed that that first stitch of the border, like so. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that very first stitch of the border and slip stitch. I'm then going to chain one and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail to weave that in later, and then going to go ahead and pull that yarn right through that stitch and give it a little tug to lock it in place. So there we have added the border all the way along, and as I mentioned, you could also add a border to the end of both sleeves if you wanted to. With this design, I prefer not to, but here I have my border placed along the front and then also along the bottom and along the collar of just single crochets, and then you should have a little tie on either side here, so then when you wear the top you can go like this and just tie it into a little bow like so. That's kind of a funky looking bow, but you get the point. You can tie it right up on the front by your collar, and there is the completed top. Now you just want to go ahead and weave in all of these loose ends, and if you wanted to, you could also steam or water block the top to give it an even looser and more airy fit. And that is how you crochet this striped tieable top. And here is how the crochet top turned out with this beautiful blue and brown. I really like the color palette on this one. I think it's so pretty, and I hope the tutorial was easy enough for you to follow. If you did end up making a top, I would really like to see it, so feel free to tag me in any pictures that you post with it, or you can just send me a picture to my Instagram DMs and I'll be sure to see it, and I'll probably respond and tell you just how amazing it looks, because I absolutely adore seeing all of your guys' finished products and the colors that you pick out. It just makes my day to see these designs come to life. And if you have any questions about this tutorial at all, then feel free to leave those in the comments down below and I'll do my very best to get back to you. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing or liking this video. It helps me out so much, and it's what keeps me going and what allows me to continue bringing and creating more crochet tutorials for you. And I really hope that you have a wonderful, peaceful, and blessed couple of days until I see you again. I'm trying to get back on a weekly posting schedule, so I will most likely see you next week with another video. Until then, have a wonderful week. Goodbye.